Hi everyone, and welcome to video number 3 on Elizabethan England. And videos 3 and 4, ladies and gentlemen, we can put them together, part 1 and part 2. And what we're going to be looking at are the problems or the challenges that were facing Queen Elizabeth I when she became Queen in 1558. The challenges. Now, 1507. Henry VIII became king. Hooray! Said everybody in the country. Henry VIII, let's have a look. He's our new young king. He's clever. He could speak many languages. Hooray! We welcome Henry VIII. Forward 50 years. 1558. Queen Elizabeth I becomes ruler. She becomes queen. Well, she's new, just like her dad Henry VIII. She was young. She was clever. She could speak many languages, just like her father Henry VIII. But whereas in 1507, everybody went, hooray! 1558, most people went, ooh, we're a little bit worried that we've got our new ruler, Queen Elizabeth. Why was that, ladies and gentlemen? Why were people worried? Elizabeth had many qualities. She was hard-working, clever, well-educated, confident, a good speaker. She had charisma. She took her time, made her decisions. So she had many qualities. Why would people be worried? Why would she have many challenges facing her to persuade the country that she would be a good monarch, a good queen? Now, the answers are going to be in this video and the next one. Do you like this, ladies and gentlemen? Oh, ha, 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 ha. Do you know what it is? Well, rich Elizabethan men used to wear these, very fashionable. They were called a ruff, R-U-F-F, a ruff. Now, remember that word, because to help you remember the challenges and problems that Elizabeth faced, I've created the word ruffle. Ruff, ruffle. A bit like, oh, your feathers have been ruffled. You have got some problems. Ruffle. If you remember that, that will help you remember the problems faced by Elizabeth. R for religion. U for unmarried. F for female. F for France. L for legitimacy. E for economy. There you have many of the problems and challenges faced by Queen Elizabeth I. Now, R, religion, a massive problem. I'm putting it in the next video so I can give it a bit more time. F, France, another big problem. I'm putting that in the next video. Religion and France I'll look at next. In video 3, this video, we're going to look at unmarried, female, legitimacy and economy. The 4 challenges that we are going to look at in this video. Now, I'm getting married in the morning. No, I'm not, said Elizabeth. She was not married. In fact, she never got married. 1558. Why would people think being unmarried was a problem? What do you think? Well, many people felt her job, her duty was to get married and produce an heir. A son, hopefully, or a daughter, it was very sexist back then, to be the next ruler. They thought that was important. They thought it would settle the country down. You've got to remember, when Henry VIII died, 1547, his son took over, but he only ruled for 6 years, Edward. When he died, the sister took over, Mary, but she only ruled for 5 years. So there had been a lot of change, and people wanted stability, and they thought if Elizabeth married, it would provide her with stability. Also, of course, if there's a proper heir, then all of those important nobles and landowners will fall into line. They won't be arguing, trying to be top dog, and maybe causing civil wars, fighting. So there was pressure on Elizabeth to marry straight away. At first, Elizabeth said, well, hang on, I need to concentrate on the other problems, religion and France. Two big problems. They're in the next video. So a lot of people said, right, you've got to get married. And there were many people throughout England and Europe who wanted to marry Elizabeth. England was a rich, powerful nation. People married kings and queens then to become more powerful for their country. So Philip II of Spain wanted to marry Elizabeth. She said no. Duke Alençon from France wanted to marry Elizabeth. She said no. Some of the top English nobles, Robert Dudley, Earl of Leicester, wanted to marry Elizabeth. There was a prince in Sweden wanted to marry Elizabeth, but it was always no. She never ever got married. Now, that remained a problem. Throughout her reign, she never got married, and it will link in very, very carefully with a video that's coming up in the future on Mary, Queen of Scots. Remember that one. So our first problem there, the fact that she was unmarried. Now, some of you might like one of the great singers of our time, Beyonce. Who Run the World? Girls, Girls is one of her favourite and famous hits. Who runs the world? Girls, girls, says Beyonce. Well, not back in 1558. It was not like that, ladies and gentlemen. Back in 1558, men dominated England. Men dominated society. It was very sexist. People thought that women were too emotional to be a good ruler. And this is what Elizabeth faced. It wasn't too long ago that kings led their armies into battle. Elizabeth's own grandfather, Henry Tudor, led his army into battle, 1485, Battle of Bosworth. He was there at the battle that he then became King of England. Now, even Elizabeth's top advisor, Cecil, remember, in the Privy Council, he was discussing some important matter in 1560, so still fairly early in Elizabeth's reign, and he said, it's too much for a woman's knowledge. Wow. What, any woman? Yes, it was that sexist. Now, Elizabeth, as I've said, was very clever and very hard-working. What Cecil was talking about would not have been too much for her to work out. She was a clever person, but that was the impression at the time. Why was that? Well, go back. Elizabeth's half-sister, Mary, Bloody Mary, 1553 to 1558, there had been a lot of problems in her reign. She'd made a very unpopular marriage to Philip of Spain. She'd started a very unpopular war against France, which England lost, and it was very expensive. So because Mary had made some bad and unpopular decisions, women got the blame. What could Elizabeth do about this? She was a female. All she could do was rule as best as she could, and hopefully, over time, over months and years, people would see, despite being a female, she was a very capable ruler. So there's your second problem. Unmarried, female. Now, the next one. Legitimacy. What does that mean? Well, it means legal, lawful. Some people thought that actually Elizabeth lawfully should not be Queen of England. Why not? Have you got any ideas? Well, it goes back to her father, Henry VIII. Remember? 6 wives. First wife, Catherine of Aragon. He divorced her to marry his second wife, Anne Boleyn. Anne Boleyn was the mother of Elizabeth. when he married her, the Pope said, no, this marriage is not legal. It's not recognised by the Church, by the Roman Catholic Church. That's why Henry set up the Church of England, so he could get the permission to marry Anne Boleyn. But many Catholics said, right, the Pope hasn't recognised your marriage, therefore any children from that marriage, Elizabeth, they are not lawfully entitled to be the monarch. They cannot rule. So there's an issue there. Later on, when Henry wants to move on and get rid of Anne Boleyn and marry again, he himself, after 1536, and Anne Boleyn was executed, Henry VIII actually said, oh, Elizabeth is not legitimate. Later on, he reversed that, and so she was legitimate again in Henry's eyes. But for the Catholics and some of the Protestants, both of them are saying, is Elizabeth legitimate? Should she be the ruler? What could Elizabeth do about that? Nothing really. The Catholics are still not really going to say, you are legitimate. All she could do is wear the crown, have the sceptre, the symbols of power, and rule well. Carry on. Even probably if she'd married and had an heir, it still wouldn't have changed people's mind. One thing on her side, she was the daughter of Henry VIII, and Henry VIII remained his legacy, his memory. He was a popular ruler, so she's got that on her side. Also on her side, the only real alternative to Elizabeth was Mary Queen of Scots. And Mary Queen of Scots was linked with England's greatest enemy at the time, France. So there's the next one, legitimacy. She couldn't really solve it. All she could do, like being female, was prove that she could rule well. And the last one we're looking at in this video, economy, finance. Now, remember I said, her sister Mary had fought a war with France, very expensive, 1558. When she became queen, England's finances were in a bit of a mess. £300,000 in debt. That was a huge amount back then, at that time. Mary had fought against France, and the brother, Edward, had fought against Scotland. Wars are expensive. So Elizabeth becomes queen with all the problems, and she's in debt, £300,000. Now, putting all of the money together that she would raise, income from crown lands, rents, customs duties from trade, she would get about £287,000 per year. Well, she's £300,000 in debt, so it's a big problem. What did Elizabeth do? To be fair to her, she solved this problem. This was one of the ones she could solve, and she did. She cut back on the spending. She ran a very, very frugal court. She hasn't got a big family. She cuts back on spending. And very, very quickly, what she does is she turns this £300,000 debt right the way around. And she leaves a surplus in credit of £300,000. So she gets in £600,000. This was a fantastic effort. The debt was paid off, and she's leaving money there. How did she do that? Well, as I've said, cutting spending, sorting out the economy, the finances of the crown, selling lands, etc. She also made peace with France very, very quickly. That would save money. In fact, she had so much money that she was still able to spend £100,000 on weapons and armaments and things like that. So, economy, finance is sorted. Now, she had a little bit of luck. Back in Mary's reign, there had been some terrible weather, there had been some very bad harvests, they hadn't been able to sort of sell all the food. When Elizabeth becomes Queen, 1558, they have some good harvests. So they've got the food, so at least they don't have to worry about that. So, go back to the rough. Go back to ruffle. Religion. Huge problem. We'll look at that next time. Unmarried. We've seen what the problem was. You could answer a question on the features. She couldn't solve it, or she didn't solve it because she didn't get married. She just overcame it by being a good ruler. Female. She was a woman. She couldn't solve that. She couldn't change that. She could overcome it by being a good ruler. France. Next video, we'll talk about that. Legitimacy. She could not change people's minds. If they thought, oh, you shouldn't be queen, she couldn't really change their minds. All she could do was be a good ruler and say, look, I'm doing a good job. Economy, she could change. Finance, she could change. And she did. So we've looked at 4. There's 2 more to look at. They might ask you, possibly in the exam, 2 key features of the problems or challenges. Use this video to help you. Or they might say, explain why, and then they could pick one of them, was the biggest challenge. Now, when we look at video 4, religion and France, then we'll look at all 6, and then you could make your judgment. Which one was the biggest? We'll talk about that in video 4. Ruffle. I'm going to ruffle your feathers. There may be trouble ahead. Well, there was for Elizabeth. How would she deal with that trouble? Video 4, religion and France. It's coming soon. Hope this one's been useful for you as ever. Hope you haven't felt too rough about it all. Sorry, terrible jokes, no more whatsoever. This is the King or Queen signing off. All the best now. Speak to you soon.